Whenever I travel abroad, I pack my own Ugandan foods: milk, millet flour, fruits, legumes, chicken, honey, and plantain bananas, called matok in our language. The other day, my pineapple stocks ran out, and my staff bought pineapples from a supermarket in UK when I was coming here. I just took one slice and terminated the whole exercise at once. First of all, the pineapple is hard. I have never seen a hard pineapple until I saw the one in London. It is less sweet and has got an ammonia-like pungent taste. I had the same experience in Washington once. They brought something they called pineapple. I couldn't believe it. Why must citizens of the world endure these deprivations on account of policies designed to serve narrow interests? Why must this be? I will not eat pineapple again until I go back to Uganda. With more civilized aims and methods, balanced world development is possible and desirable for everybody, including the OECD citizens who are forced to eat inferior foods and are taxed to protect those poor quality foods against better foods from Africa. The world, therefore, needs to encourage these positive trends in Africa by opening up their markets on a quota-free, tariff-free basis. This will ipso facto force the multinational investors to rush to Africa and invest there. They are already doing so just by the limited movement of AGOA by the Americans. With more civilized aims and methods, balanced world development is possible and desirable for everybody, including the OECD citizens who are forced to eat inferior foods and are taxed to protect those poor quality foods against better foods from Africa. The song about aid is meaningless without access to markets. Aid without access to markets is meaningless. All protectionism, especially in the OECD countries, must end. Subsidies to farmers of Europe must end if we are talking of a global village of symbiosis, not parasitism. I commend the American government and President George Bush for the recent AGOA initiative. AGOA means African Growth and Opportunity Act. Although Uganda has not yet benefited from AGOA on account of our indigenous weaknesses accentuated by the blurred views of our multilateral institutions partners, other African countries have started benefiting, such as Kenya, Madagascar, Lesotho, Nigeria, and South Africa. This is very good. This is very good. This is the first good news I have had in a long time. The AGOA, the African Growth Opportunity Act, enunciated by the American government. The Americans are at last beginning to address their image as non-parasitic global villagers. The Europeans must catch up with the Americans in rubbing off this uncomplimentary label. Although they have talked about everything but guns going into the European market from Africa, they are still giving subsidies to artificial farmers in Europe. This distorts the trade in agricultural products As a consequence, out of the United States dollars, 1.2 trillion, that is the value of the global trade in agricultural products, Africa gets on about US dollars 20 billion, if you include the results of the AGOA recently, which is about 2% of the total. So out of the total value of trade in agriculture, Africa gets only 2%. At the same time, the OECD countries are spending United States dollars 361 billion subsidizing artificial farmers of those countries. Yet, these are the countries that evangelize in the name of free trade. The preachers of free trade are practicing incredibly expensive protectionism. What a paradox, which is also unfortunate. These double standards must end. Africa has now removed some of the old impediments, some of the old endogenous factors to private investment. The sanctity of the private property is now almost a universal concept in Africa. Nationalization of private enterprises is no more. Some of the African countries have got a consistently stable macroeconomic framework. Inflation in Uganda now is minus 0.03% as I speak today. The African currencies are now convertible. A large part of Africa is very peaceful, infrastructure is reasonable, and democracy is widely practiced in Africa today. We are even addressing the issue of excessive political balkanization of the continent, with 53 states in Africa compared to 3 states in the whole of North American continent. We are handling this in a variety of ways, including economic blocs like SADC in Southern Africa, COMESA in East and Central Africa, and ECOWAS in Western Africa.